So thank you for coming tonight. We're running today's meeting slightly differently than normal. So before we get started with our agenda, I'd first like to give it up to Jess and the community dinner crew for our amazing dinner. And I will also pass the mic over to Jess. Do you want your...
Thank you, Lauren. That's very loud. So how was dinner? Nice. Thank you for your patience and for enjoying a two-part meal. As always, oh, this is really awful. Yeah, come this way. Oh, much better. As always, we want to have a huge round of applause for our volunteers, both in the kitchen and our bakers who bake at home and bring your delicious desserts in. And a big, big thank you to Intervale Community Farm and City Market for all the wonderful ingredients that went into dinner. A big thank you, too, to Clara, who has already gone home. Clara came up with this recipe and stewarded the delicious paella, which I thought was wonderful. And big thanks to Clara and Patrick for putting this extra special meal together. As I always remind folks, this is a volunteer-driven meal. Your donations help us pay for ingredients for next month's dinner. So thank you so much. If you put a couple dollars in the can, or if you sent something via Venmo, we really appreciate your support and participation in this wonderful community meal. And Patrick is coming up here. Does he want the microphone? I'm going to pass it over to Patrick. And thank you all for being here tonight.
Because Jess said this is a community supported by volunteers, all of those volunteers come from where? City Market. Without City Market, this wouldn't exist as it is. They've given us tons of money and support over the years, and without 90% of the people that we get from their worker membership hours, we'd be toast, burnt toast. So keep them alive. Brave whatever it is sort of stigma is around the downtown market and show up. They're doing more good, this is it, than just that store.
All right, thank you both so much, and thank you again to the crew doing community dinner. There is information for donating in the back. There is a Venmo code to donate and also a cash box. So please help keep this going if you are able. All right, so before we get started, you may notice we don't have agendas on the table, so I apologize. And the agendas are also not on our website because I forgot to do it, so apologize for that. So I'm going to do a quick verbal talk through of the agenda. It is available on Civic Clerk if you are familiar with Civic Clerk. All right, so we're going to start off with our usual public forum and our top 5 things in Burlington. We are going to do a quick budget vote to use some more of our funds to support the community dinner. At 6:55, we'll have some updates from our city councilors. At 7:15, we will have a presentation on the history of the Old North End from our very own Megan. And then we will finally close out the meeting with a presentation on Fair Housing Month. So the meeting will end at 8 p.m. and if you stay till the end, you can enter a raffle to win a City Market gift card. But you can, okay, $25, I'm being told to say. $25 City Market gift card. So you can support City Market, and you can only win that if you stay till the end. So if you're interested, there is a box in the back to put your name in, and I'll draw a name at the end. All right, so with that, let's get started with public forum. So as a reminder, please share your name, pronouns, and what street you live on, and 2 minutes each. All right, I see a hand.
Thank you. I'm Andrea Todd, Ward 2, Rose Street, she, her pronouns. I'm just going to piggyback on what Patrick started, which is about City Market. And I've been really worried about it, so I just wanted to let the community know that as a result of community engagement with the board and with City Market, the agenda, the agendas and the, I don't actually know if it's the agendas, the meeting information is now more visible on the City Market website. Before, it was nearly impossible to find out when the meetings were happening and any prior meeting minutes from previous meetings. All those things are now available on the City Market website. Yay! In addition to that, John Toshiro, the general manager, and Sam, I can't remember his last name, the president of the board, are having an open coffee session on Saturday the 25th. You do have to register to do that, but it's an opportunity to hear directly from them about what's happening with City Market. And then the following Monday is the next board meeting. So for people who want to be involved in actually knowing what's happening with City Market, please, please, please go to these meetings or get involved. So thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. And thank you for starting a lot of the conversation on Front Porch Forum.
Thank you. It's on? Yeah. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Nikhil Goyal. I've spoken here a couple times now. We are heading into the primary season for the August election. My name is Nikhil Goyal. I'm a candidate for Vermont State Senate in Chittenden Central, which includes Burlington, Winooski, Essex, Essex Junction, and Colchester. Hoping to get and earn your vote for the August primary. I'm running to make Vermont more affordable. Working people are being priced out of our state. We have the highest healthcare costs in the country, a lack of affordable housing, energy bills out of control, property taxes that are skyrocketing. We need bold, transformative solutions that are going to make sure that nobody is priced out of our state. I'm running to change that, to invest in universal primary care so that everyone has access to primary preventative care and people don't have to use the emergency room for basic care. I'm running to keep public dollars in our public schools, to strengthen our public schools and address some of the cost drivers of rising property taxes in our school budgets. I'm running to build affordable housing, to make sure that we build the sufficient units so that people are housed and can afford their rent and their mortgages. I'm running to take on big tech so that we protect the privacy and the safety and well-being of our children and our seniors. And I'm running to protect every member of our community. As the son of Indian immigrants, I've been on the front lines fighting to make sure that our neighbors are protected when ICE has come to our doorstep. I'll be door knocking. I've knocked on more than 1,200 doors over the past 3 months. You might see me over the next couple of weeks and months. We'd love to hear your thoughts, your concerns, the things you want to see changed and addressed here in Vermont. Look forward to those conversations. So thank you so much.
Any other public forum?
Hello. Okay. Hi, my name is Victor Davila. I've been living in the Old North End for about a year now, maybe a year or two. Hey, my partner works at City Market. I would love to learn more about that campaign, like just as an individual. I say this to preface the fact that I'm the clean water director for a nonprofit called Slingshot. Something that I do a lot in Vermont is work on PFAS issues. PFAS being forever chemicals that are incredibly toxic and build up in your bloodstream. And while we are all surrounded by PFAS all the time, new sources of PFAS need to be taken seriously, because it's kind of like, if I lost my arm and it was bleeding out, I wouldn't want new holes in me, right? I would want to staunch the flow of the thing that might kill me. I don't have time to go into like the unfortunate litany of problems PFAS contamination has been causing across the country right now. But a concern I have is that Global Foundries has recently received a $1.6 billion IRA injection. That injection of funds means that they can expand 2 facilities, one in Vermont and one in New York. They are a microchips manufacturer to some extent, And a lot of what they currently release from their from their wastewater contains PFAS. That PFAS water dumps directly into rivers that directly scoop into Lake Champlain, right? The toxicity levels of PFAS is 4 parts per trillion, right? That is a drop in a pool, an Olympic-sized swimming pool, is enough to be horrendous for your health when exposed to. The organization I work for, we can't do anything directly. We're symbiotic. We train people on how to lead these kinds of things. It's pretty hard to get folks involved in something that hasn't happened yet. It would just take a fraction of the funds they receive from taxpayer money to put in the appropriate filtration systems it would take to remove that PFAS at the point source of production. Right? If they on their website say they care about Vermont residents, there's a good, strong union in that area. No one wants to make an enemy of job providers, but this filtration system would help save a lot of lives down the road. So if anyone here is interested in that and wants to talk to me about that in more depth at some point, please feel free to talk and reach out to me. I'll be here throughout the rest of the night.
Thank you very much.
All right. Megan?
Hi, everybody. I'm Megan Humphrey, and I am supporting Nikhil Goyal 110%. And next Thursday, a week from tonight, there will be a free community dinner and his campaign launch right here in this space at 5:30. And you just need to RSVP ahead of time, please. The food is going to be delicious, coming from Mountain Valley in Winooski. And I think that's it. So if you go to nikhilgoyal.com, and there will be a flyer on the front table, you can just sign up through there. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
My name is Solveig Overby. I just wanted to let people know that at the end of the month, the Vermont Stage Company's upcoming performance is Rhinoceros. And if anybody has heard about that, it's from the 50s. It's quite an interesting, very funny thing, but it also has some serious thoughts that you can think about after watching it. So it's April 30th through May 17th. Rhinoceros, it's at the Main Street Landing Theater, Vermont Stage Company, if anybody's interested. Thanks.
All right. Anyone else? All right. So next up on the agenda, I'm going to go through some of what the steering committee considers our top 5 in Burlington for the past month, which, if you remember last month's meeting, it's something new. We're trying to kind of keep some of the top items that are going on in the city and just bring them back up quickly. So what we have for this month, first, the new city councilors were sworn in this past Monday, which is really exciting. And the mayor also gave her annual State of the City. The recording is available if you would like to review that. Another one is that there are a lot of pop-up cleanup crews inspired in part by the original cleanup crew, whose founder is right there. Yes, we do. That deserves a hand. So there is one in the Old North End. There's one in neighborhoods across the city. I saw the one in the Old North End posting on Front Porch Forum yesterday. If you have any questions about that, I can probably dig up that information for you. But definitely be on the lookout for those. It's really great to see the community organizing. And I know, Kason, you also organized a learn how to do this and start one, which is great to see the success from that. And Green Up Day is also on May 2nd this year in similar news. Another one is the Penguin Plunge, which happened in March, raised $585,000 for Special Olympics, which is a huge sum of money. It's awesome. And then coming up in May, this is like new news, but if you're interested in applying for a city board, the annual review for that is coming up in June. You have to get your application in May. So those postings will be on the website probably soon. I think they're not quite up yet, if I remember correctly. And finally, The superintendent of the Burlington School District is doing a monthly coffee session at Skinny Pancake on April 17th at 8 a.m. If you'd like to check in with him, talk about the Burlington School District, anything like that, I just wanted to flag that. So those are our top 5 for the month. So with that, I will, oh, no, we're doing a budget vote first. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so we are just doing a quick budget vote. So in order to promote the community dinner, which Jess and her team also do a great job of promoting the NPA with the community dinner, you may have noticed that there are sandwich boards, both on, I don't know what street this is, this side and also the North Street side. You can't hear? If anyone's having side conversations, if you wouldn't mind just going outside or in the hallway. And if someone could close the kitchen door or ajar it, thank you. Okay, so on the community dinner, we are voting to get some new signs, so that way we can both promote the community dinner as well as the NPA. So we are voting to use some of our NPA budget funds. And Jess has requested $100 in order to redo the signs in the front and in the back. So if you don't recall how budget votes go, you must be a Ward 2 resident. That's it. That's all we're asking for. And I'll just go through and say, all those in favor of allocating $100, raise your hand. We'll count you. All those opposed, all those abstaining. The only real rule is that you have to be a Ward 2 resident. So with that, does anyone have any questions? Pretty straightforward. We love the community dinner, right? All right, so all those in favor of allocating $100 of the Ward 2 NPA budget to new signage, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. All right, 23. All those opposed? And abstentions. All right, thank you everyone. That passed unanimously. Okay, now I can jump ahead and welcome our lovely City Councilor Grant, and I think Councilor Bergman is online to give an update from City Council.
Hello. The snow has melted. Came back for a minute, but then it melted. And I'm sure everyone has noticed how dirty things look. There's a lot of garbage. People got lazy about picking things up and cleaning up after their dogs. It was just mentioned about Green Up Day on May 2nd. So I think it'd be really great if you haven't done it for a while, you think about getting out there, and because our green belts, our streets, yards, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Also, just to make you aware, a lot of people have been talking about the situation down at the waterfront. I've had communications with DPW. So between April 17th and the 22nd, the schedule is to clean up the area around the Moran plant, around the urban reserve, as well as the Pine Street barge area. And they don't have it finalized, but they're working on a plan to clean up that area that's under Battery Park. And there's already been some cleaning on Depot Street, still needs some more, but just so you know that the issue is recognized and plans are being made to be worked on. About 2 years ago, we did a big community cleanup. In the one, we had dumpsters at the 2 elementary schools, SA and IAA. We collected tires, scrap metal. People dropped off furniture they didn't want anymore, and some of that was taken down to resource. So we are working on finalizing the plan for May 30th. Is a tentative date. We thought that would be a good date because still we have so many of our students who are moving out of our area, so that gives them an opportunity to properly dispose of things as opposed to leaving them on the green belt. It also gives our residents an opportunity to dispose of things that, maybe they can walk to the location. You can get rid of tires without having to pay for them if you miss the roundup that goes to the different DPW drop-offs. So we'll be advertising those and dropping off flyers as well. May 30th, it is a Saturday, and we need to do it Saturday. We haven't finalized the hours yet. Stay tuned for that. We need to do it Saturday so that the dumpsters get picked up on Sunday so school can be back in session without an issue on the following Monday. I also wanted to give a big shout out to an event that I love. It's the YMCA Kids Fest. That's going to be Saturday, April 25th. It's in the parking lot in good weather, inside if it's raining. It'll be from 10 to 1. It's a wonderful event for families. I love it. You get to see every color and type of family that lives in this city. It's really beautiful. The focus is on health and safety. There's all kinds of activities for the kids. They give out free T-shirts and also free bike helmets for the kids. So they have people who measure the kids and appropriately fit. So I think that's great. And you might see your favorite DJ. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Thank you. On to things just as important, but a little bit less fun. Budget. I will have Jean talk more about that, but we're getting ready to do the presentations. And I'm sure you've all heard that we continue to struggle with a budget gap. The mayor's office has been putting out a lot more communications. Please sign up for the mayor's email if you've not already done so. You can do that from the city's website. And also, there have been really excellent documents that, without boring you to tears, in a really condensed way, explain what's been happening each of the last couple of fiscal years. This is what we faced. This is what we did to address it. This is the end result. This is what we faced. This is what we did to address it. And now we're talking about FY27 in terms of what we're facing and what the next moves will be. Public Safety Committee was on March 26. It was a very important meeting. We had a presentation from the Howard Street team, and they had data. And I think a lot of people know about the Howard Street team, but do we really know about the Howard Street team? So I personally found some of the data that they're now tracking to be really interesting, and they're going to be doing periodic presentations. But there was also a very important presentation from Sarah George. And it made me kind of feel good, because sometimes we, in the whole community safety sphere, there's been a lot to be concerned about. The accountability court was wildly successful. It cleared hundreds of cases. All the state's attorney's office across the state have been dealing with for years, going back to COVID, the backlogs that caused that hundreds of cases. That led people to talk about and use the expression, quote unquote, catch and release. Have we all heard that expression? What was really happening is people were carrying multiple cases, and their charges were not such that they would be held. Their charges are not something you could put them on bail for or hold them into trial. That led all these people running around with dozens of cases in some cases. So what they did was they took all these people, the top people, I think the top 21 was close to 1,000 cases, so 21 people, that many cases, it was crazy. And they just focused on them. They had an extra court, they had a special judge, and they just cleaned it up. What is great now is that the state's attorneys, for the first time in years, have reasonable caseloads, because they not only had the criminal cases, which were averaging 2,800 to 3,000 a month, they had other cases, family court and other types of cases. So they were all carrying hundreds of cases. So now this is giving them breathing room that they've needed for the first time in a while. And even though they don't have the accountability court anymore, the governor's moving it to Rutland, they still are going to say, hey, once somebody gets to 3 open cases, we're going to make sure those cases are heard. We're not going to wait for that person to be in a situation where they're going to have yet another case. So that's important. So I just want to give you that in a nutshell. I really think listening to her presentation is extremely informative. She talked about a lot of other things. I do think that having the accountability court, the concept continuing, is very important because we have people sometimes that come to our area from other areas, and they have open cases in multiple places. So this will still help us. So if the governor is willing to continue to rotate this court, I think it's going to help Vermont as a whole, city of Burlington, and definitely the central district that we live in, which is the most affected area for crime. We had also a representative for migrant justice talk about March 11th and really express concerns, like having gone through the mayor's executive order and talked about, okay, this is what the executive order says, but it didn't happen, to also talk about the fairness and impartial policing policy, which we call FIP. This is what's in this policy. This is what didn't work. We also had a hearing last night. It was 4 hours. We heard some more public forum from people that were there and affected by it. And then we heard from Migrant Justice and also Vermont Legal Aid and some others where it was a extended conversation, another timeline. So this was a timeline that we're looking at differently as opposed to the timeline that law enforcement has presented. And I'm not saying what law enforcement has presented is not correct, but we all know that sometimes our points of view vary depending on where we're standing. So I thought it was important, and it was more detailed conversation about this is where we failed. My opinion, you know what, and it is not an opinion. Let's talk facts. No one in law enforcement has addressed the fact there was a warrant with someone's name on it, and they weren't in that house. And 3 people were detained. No one in law enforcement has addressed the fact that why couldn't Burlington, South Burlington, Vermont State Police say, we're going to go into the house. You had people there that would help. You had representatives from Migrant Justice, you had lawyers, you had people there would help. Say, we're going to help you go into the house. We're going to identify people in the house who are not on the warrant, and let's get them safely out of the house. Someone has to explain why that didn't happen. The fact that didn't happen, I feel it's a violation of FIP. That don't make me too popular right now, because that's not what law enforcement wants to say. But it has to be one of the hard conversations, because we know this is probably going to happen again. Not probably, it will happen again. It's been happening. And when police didn't get involved, we've had situations where ICE chose to leave. There's too much video. There's just too much video for certain narratives to be pushed onto us. I'm going to give it to Jean in just a moment, but I really care about the work that I've been doing in community safety. It hasn't always been easy, and it hasn't always been what some people would refer to as being politically expedient. I was taken to task for going to bat for our neighborhood when we weren't getting served by the department, when we had a number of issues with the previous police chief where people got no responses. We were told to put everything online and would not get a response. And there's other things that are going on right now. So let's see what happens in the next couple of weeks. But I just want to put it out there that this work has been really important to me, because I feel it's what has helped me help our community. And I just encourage everyone to be present because that's needed now more than ever. If you haven't filed a complaint, we need to file a complaint not only with our department, we need to file a complaint with South Burlington. You need to reach out to the South Burlington City Council. You need to send an email to the Vermont Criminal Justice Council. You need to file a complaint with Vermont State Police. You're going to choke people out and threaten to break their fingers. We need the body cam footage for all law enforcement that was there reviewed. We have to have that, and we need it all released. It's not going to happen if people don't advocate for it. All right, Jean.
All right. Thank you, Milo. Can I ask, I don't know, Laura or Charlie or somebody, can I see like the crowd, since all I can see is an empty table, and I really have a very hard time talking to an empty table. So y'all can see me. Thank you.
Jean,
At least
could you also talk about GMT? I forgot to talk about GMT. I think that's important to
yeah,
mention.
yeah. That sounds like a good thing to do. Let me just finish, or like follow up on what you're saying, Milo, with the ICE raid. We were there. Burlington police were there because we were asked to go there on a mutual aid agreement with South Burlington, and I just gotta let everybody who was not present at the demonstration, the protection, that everybody's freedoms to get out and speak our minds is implicated by what I do think was a police riot that happened in South Burlington. And the way that they dealt with civil disobedience that was occurring at the date really does call into question anybody who's engaged in civil disobedience, your safety. It's totally amazing to me to have watched the flashbanging, the pepper spraying, and the throwing of people onto the ground, right? And so I really want to echo what Milo said about looking at last night's meeting. For anybody who has not looked at it, go on the city's website to the agendas and go and look at that meeting for both the public forum and and then the follow-up. And what you will see Milo and myself and other members of our caucus really call for is a very comprehensive review and a public review of everything, not only of the to make sure that the excessive force complaints are dealt with in a way that people understand that process is fair and was thorough and took into account the harms that people suffered, but the issues related to how we go about dealing with people who are engaged in First Amendment activities and may be engaged in civil disobedience, whether it is when there's ICE involved, whether there is not ICE involved, whether it's in Burlington, whether it is under a mutual aid activity. So we are going to have to engage in some very serious, hard reviews. And they, in my mind, and I called for this last night, they need to be public, which is basically you all being able to see what we're talking about. An inside game is a game that is guaranteed to not deal with the issues that we've got to confront. Command and control is in terms of our officers and how they respond. They were there under the command of South Burlington, and apparently they do things. Maybe they do things differently, or maybe they, we all do it the same. But that is implicated by the actions that were taken place. The training that people have is called into question. Whether there's a gray area, cops don't like things that are gray, and we need to obviously change the way that fair and impartial policing is looked at and understood by law enforcement, and that is trained. And so these are things that we need, that Milo and I, and now Laura from the from Ward 3, need to have you all be writing emails to the city council, coming to public forum, and just making sure that this is not swept under the rug. Because, like I said, everybody's right to speak out in public is implicated by what happened. And it is very clear to me that not only is democracy in the nation at risk, but the soul of our city is at stake. So I just want to make that plea. Want to point people to a front porch forum that I posted on Green Mountain Transit, the legislature, including and especially the leadership of the House and the Senate, are failing in providing the funding that is necessary to stop the crashing of Green Mountain Transit and the bus system here. I mean, it stinks to begin with, but they're allowing it to just, bleed out. And it's amazing. So the city's Transportation, Energy, Utilities Committee, of which I'm a member, has 2 Democrats and 2 progressives on it, and we all united around a letter that I put in the last 5 days, and be happy to circulate it to somebody here so it could get out, calling on Phil Baruth while he's still in the Senate to really deal with this issue from the Senate, because the House and the House leadership, of which unfortunately one of our 2 state representatives is a speaker, so she's leadership there, and we need more from Representative Krawinski to make sure that our bus system does not continue to hemorrhage, and they have not done a good job on that. And that letter I can circulate again if people want. Maybe I'll send it to Laura, and we'll be able to to get it out in some ways through the NPA. But that's something that is really important. It speaks to the whole question about whether our economy has any sort of equity with regard to economic development. People have got to go and be able to get to places in an affordable way and in an ecological way. So this is happening. It's something that it affects the city and that we're trying to deal with, but we don't have any direct power on, which is just sort of too bad. But this is what we have to do. Just want to echo in terms of the budget stuff. 7 Days wrote an article about the budget, not this week, that dropped yesterday, but a week ago. And it's a good article. I got little tweaky complaints on it, but really it does lay out the big picture. And for anybody who's riding your bike or walking or driving your car, which means anybody who's going around, knows like the state of our streets and sidewalks, right? And I hear complaints. I've got complaints. The money that we've got to fix that stuff is just not enough, is not sufficient, and things are going to get worse. And one of the things that we've done, like Ward 2 voted overwhelmingly, like 70 more, maybe it was even 80. I think we had the highest percentage of people who actually voted in favor of the fire and police public safety tax, because we know the importance of that. Think of the budget as needing a number of different legs to be able to stand up, so that it's not one part of it isn't overly relied upon, right? So if we raise property taxes too much to cover a $10 million debt, then anybody who owns a home, anybody who rents, is going to get whacked. And so that was part of the plan and we, people overwhelmingly dealt with it. But one of the problems that we've got, and I do see your hand, Andrea, and my computer is sort of glitching on me, is that one of the fights that we have is going to be over keeping the source, the funding source that is the gross receipts tax where it is, because it raises almost $1 million, and the thought of having to come up with another $1 million cuts is unbelievable on this. And now I'm sorry, but I'm having an issue with my computer. Well, of which Carsey Blanton is now invaded here, which I love, but is not a good thing. So I don't know if maybe I'll stop blabbing and this is a city computer. It's not. It's in need of replacement.
I built the house of mud and brick. Roof was tall, the walls were thick. My brothers went to market.
There you go with that. All right, I don't know. Let me stop while my computer. I've now got it back, but yeah, Andrea.
Thank you. I just want to thank.
Now I have to turn up the volume. Carsey you're gonna be competing with Carsey, which I'm sorry, I do love her.
I want to thank Milo and Jean so much for the work that you're doing for us. So thank you. I keep trying to find in 7 days and in some of the glimmers of what you're talking about with the budget, I keep trying to understand why we have a $10 million deficit again. And I would like to make a request that the mayor speak with as an NPA issue, because I don't find her public, like her thing, it's just like sound bites from this week. It's not like a clear, here's where the $10 million deficit is exactly, and this is why we have it. I want a kind of a better answer to why we again have a $10 million deficit, or more than $10 million deficit, because it feels like each time we're asked to sort of step up again and again, and I feel like if there's positions from the pandemic that are still being carried over, that are unfunded, I want to know what those are, and I want to know why we're continuing to fund them. And I don't find the answers to those easily, either in the 7 days articles or in kind of the blurbs from the city. So I'm not asking either of you to answer those questions right now. I don't want to put you on the spot for that, but I think that I can reasonably put the mayor on the spot for that, for asking her to talk to us at city council, at an NPA meeting dedicated to explaining why the $10 million deficit again, specifically, and why we are not eliminating positions from pandemic era funding if we don't have them, and that kind of thing. So that's just my request. Thanks.
Thanks, Andrea, and I will pass that on. I think that one of the things that will be illustrative is is sort of the discussion that we're going to have about cuts. So as we're looking at this, and we are and have over the last 2 years cut the budget, and that means cutting programs, and that's something where people, what we really do need is for folks to be looking at what we're cutting and what we've got, and be saying, okay, these are services that we can't afford, or these are the services that we don't need, and then help through those conversations. Personally, I think that this is a question of revenue, which is why I am so outraged that the Democrats have been pushing cutting the 0.5% on the gross receipts tax, which will create $1 million, $1 million bigger hole to cut. And which is pennies, not even pennies, not even full pennies on money that people are spending on the disposable income that they've got to go out to eat. And if we're looking for having a city which does all the things that we need it to do, then we need a variety of revenue sources, and that is one. So this is a live fight. We've got let me end. I know that I'm now a minute over, but we've got a tax reform committee that we're seriously interested in bringing something forward to voters in November. And the planning process does reveal that there are a lot more rich people that have moved into Burlington, and so our tax program does request that we get more from those in our family, so to speak, that can afford it. So more on that, but I will pass that on, Andrea. Thanks.
If I could jump in, so those summary documents that I was talking about, that's exactly what you want to look at. So just send me an email, just put budget summary documents, and I will send those to you. It will show you the positions that were cut, and in the upcoming budget presentations, which are starting within the next 2 weeks, you're going to see exactly positions that were kept unfilled, decisions that have been made to permanently eliminate some positions. The Modern Gov initiative has been, you just can't change the city government like in just a few months. It has to be a gradual thing. So the consolidation of certain departments and additional consolidation that will continue to happen. We still are dealing with healthcare. The cost of healthcare continues to rise exponentially. They've just done contracts for police and fire, getting ready to do contracts for the union that represents the city workers. Given everything that's going on, the cost of living, these people deserve a COLA. They deserve other things. So it's these type of costs that, even though we're continuing to change government, eliminate positions, consolidate departments, what's happening at the federal level is causing havoc. It's affecting the amount of money that goes to state, which also then affects things that come into the city. Look at the money we're spending on the war. Billions of dollars a day. This is why we can't get our streets paved. So it's a multitude of things. But these budget summaries are super, super informative, and they are not so long, and I just think they were written really well, to be very, very clear. And then each department, when they do their budget, you'll get to see. Each department was told, give a scenario of a 5% cut, give a scenario of a 10% cut. That was their marching orders, looking at things at the possibility of voluntary furlough and some other options, really engaging employees in the process this time around, and starting the process significantly earlier. I mean, the talking of the budget has been going on for months, and the presentations are starting a full month earlier for the public.
Right. Thank you to our city councilors. Sorry, Patrick, we're at time. So thank you to our councilors. If you have any questions for them, their contact info is on our website, on the city website, or maybe you can grab Councilor Grant while she's here. But thank you both for your presentation today.
Thanks, Patrick. Send an email.
All right, so next up we have Megan giving a presentation on the history of the Old North End. So Megan, I will pass it to you.
Yeah, I do. You're all so far away. Thank you. All right, we're going back in history now. We're no longer in the present, which is probably a good thing. I'm Megan Humphrey, and I've lived in the Old North End for 45 years now, and 25 years on St. Louis Street. Sorry, everybody else, but it's the cutest street in the city. Oh, yeah, see, we're extremely well well represented percentage-wise. So I'm just sort of obsessed with the past of the city, and I'm often walking around and just feeling like all of the people that are living here and all of the buildings have some story. So I'm trying to capture just a little bit of it. We're doing a tiny slice. And if someone could please tell me when it's 20 minutes in, and then we'll just stop and do questions. So if you have any comments or questions, if you could just hold them, that would be great. So I'm using the same parameters that the Old North End Arts and Business Network uses. So that is west to the lake, east to the Winooski Bridge, south to the north side of Pearl Street, and then the Intervale. So I understand that some people use other districts for it, but that's what I'm using for this. Let's see. And before I begin, I'd like to especially give a shout out to Elise Guyette, who's in the back of the room, and Gail Rosenberg, who's watching online, because they've just put a ton of work into all kinds of history and collecting it, and are trying to develop the Burlington History and Culture Center so that we can have things in one place. And so if you have $1 million or know somebody that does, they could use it. Yeah, see, Elise really wants it. And they're looking for space somewhere in Burlington to set that up, and then we'll have a lot of gathering of information and recording and everything else that's there. And lots of other people in this community, many of whom have passed away, and some people who currently are gathering information, are just hugely helpful in collecting it. Brian Perkins is another one who's got lots of other history that I don't know anything about. So we just don't want to lose those memories. So as I said, if you don't mind holding questions and comments, just write them down, and I'm happy to answer them. Uh-oh. And can we go back to the first slide, please? That Queen City brick came from a building that was being taken down on Elmwood Ave. So I went over, it was an older woman that I had known and been friends with, and they were taking the building down, and they were going to put a Habitat for Humanity home there instead. So I said to her, could I please have one of the bricks? And she said, sure. And she went over, and I was standing there for like 10 minutes. There's a pile right there. I don't know what was going on. And she came over, and she said, I want you to have this one. And it said Queen City on it, which was really sweet. That was the only one. I think a lot of the ones around here are Drury, and then also Clavel. Right, Elise? I think from Winooski, the Clavels, Peter, David, the family, I think there were Clavel bricks also. But anyways, that's where that came from. And no, you may not have it. It's locked in my house. So the next slide, please. So this is what we're going to be covering today, depending on how far we get through. We need to, next one, please. We really need to acknowledge, I think, that we're on stolen land, and the Abnakis were here for a very long time before we came along, and Abnaki translates to people of the dawn, and they lived with extended families in groups of 50 to 100 people, and locally they were using the Intervale floodplain along the Winooski River, which translates to Onion River land, and they foraged there and hunted, and called Pasahana describes an intervale that runs east to west, and they were growing the Three Sisters that many of you have heard about. So that's corn, beans, and squash. And they were foraging for medicinals and nuts and hunting, and fished in the Winooski River. So the first photo here is of an Abnaki with a fishing weir. And the second photo was taken in front of our house. The family that we purchased the house from left a photo album. And it was a French-Canadian family, the Gravel family. And I have no idea any more about this photo. So I don't know if they were dressing up or if they were French Canadians and were also Abenaki. I'm not sure. In the late 1700s, white colonizers who learned how to survive with the help of Abenakis were utilizing the intervale floodplain and growing lots of crops. So they were growing corn, they had potash, flax, taking lumber from there and other grains. And then in the 1800s, settlers began to live and farm there. And we still, as most of you know, have lots of farmland down there that's being utilized and community garden space. So despite the constant threat of flooding and climate change, we have a lot of veggies and flowers that are being grown down there. And I don't know if anyone remembers Bill Seymour. He passed away a while ago and lived here until the 1990s, but he lived across our back fence, and he had been a former Abenaki chief, so he was often down in the intervale, and he would come home and find, he would be showing us arrowheads that he found or talking about animal tracks that he had seen down there. So he was always happy to chat with people down there and share the history. Next slide, please. Here's Burlington in the 1800s. Burlington was the third largest lumber port in the country at that point. And I didn't realize this, but Elise had pointed out that we had forested everything at that point, so we had to turn to Canada. And we were getting a lot of products back and forth to Montreal and Boston and New York. And so first it was by stagecoach, and then the Champlain Canal was built, and then by rail. So that's how we moved products around. Next slide, please. So here are just some statistics about the Old North End. There were only 10 structures on North Street in 1830. And that's from North Avenue to North Prospect. And this is the map that was just prior, was the Young's map. And then the city started to expand. So in the 1880s, the North Street area was the shopping district of the city. So it was moving north. And at that point, prior to that, it was still forested all around here. And then in 1889, there were 30 commercial businesses and 50 residential buildings on North Street. In 1995, there were only 17 commercial businesses as opposed to 30, and 52 residential buildings. So that was shifting to more residential. And you can walk along North Street and just notice that clearly some of those apartment buildings were first floor businesses, big bay windows, a lot of glass. According to the 1930 census, about 40% of Burlington residents were immigrants or first-generation Americans. So that was mostly Canadians and Eastern, Western, and Southern Europeans. More recent refugees have come from Southeast Asia and African countries, and they continue to settle here and increase our ethnic diversity. Currently, 55% of the students at Integrated Arts Academy are from immigrant communities, and over 40 languages are spoken there. I think that's pretty remarkable. Next slide, please. Oops. Behind her head. Nope, that's right, thanks. So a lot of people came to Burlington through Canada because it was cheaper. If you came through New York or anywhere else in the US, it was just more expensive. So these are different neighborhoods that were throughout the Old North End. So Little Italy, which the Italian club called that area only after it had been demolished in urban renewal, was along Pearl Street and down toward Battery Street. There was also Little Jerusalem, Little Canada or French Village was the French Canadian area. Irish and German neighborhoods also expanded. So the Italians lived by Pearl Street and St. Paul Street near the former Bove's restaurant, which is now a blight, but that had been opened originally in 1941. So next slide, please. So that's the Bove's restaurant there. and that closed in 2015. Next one, please. This is the Archibald Street Synagogue that was in what was considered Little Jerusalem, and that was a Russian and Polish Jewish neighborhood in the Hyde Street area. And that has recently, that building was sold, and now there's actually a vintage clothing store in there. Next one, please. This was originally called the German Club, and now it's called the North Star Community Hall, and that's on Crowley Street, which is right off of North Avenue. And that's where the German section was. Next one, please. So this is formerly the Nunions building, and that was the area where the Irish neighborhood was. Next one, please. The French-Canadian area was right near Integrated Arts Academy. Oh yeah, by the Best Street. Sorry, Decatur, we fight over this all the time, but just saying. So this building was actually where Integrated Arts Academy is now. And it was the Baptist French Mission Chapel. And it was built in 1873. So it's that little triangle park, Dewey Park, and then right across from that, that's where that was. And in 1888, the city purchased the building for an elementary school, so it became the Archibald Street School. And it may look familiar because it still exists. So when that same site was needed, could you go to the next slide, please? When it was needed for H.O. Wheeler School, J.E. Lanou Sr. purchased the former chapel in 1904 and moved it to 74 to 76 LaFountain Street. So it still exists. As you can tell, in the 1880s, they did not have blue recycling bins on the side porch. So he took off the bell tower and the lobby and added a two-story porch and put 4 apartments in there. And one thing that's interesting to note is that the siding is vertical as opposed to horizontal, which most buildings are horizontal. Next one, please. So I'm going to go through some what I think are interesting notes about the Old North End. They're not related in any way to each other, but they're just kind of fun. And then as I'm able in other NPAs, I'll be doing more information about specific neighborhoods, the Black history of the Old North End, a lot about different buildings that are here. So this is Elmwood Cemetery, and it was probably established in about 1794. And at that point, it was outside the downtown district, so that's where you would want to bury people, not within your village. And that was all forested, and there was no road to it. The first person that they have a record of being there was Lovely Sheldon, and she was the first person to be buried there. So the name of that street was originally Warren Street, and then Locust, and then Elmwood Avenue. So if you look at all the old maps, you have to figure out where you are because the names had changed so many times. So she was the first person buried. And then Frances Allen, who was the second wife of Ethan Allen and mother to Fanny Allen, who's on Fanny Allen Hospital, Levi Allen, Timothy Follett, Gideon King, and Zadok Thompson are buried in the southern section. And sadly, the cemetery was segregated when it was initially established. So near what's now North Street, so the north end of the cemetery, is the area where Black people were buried at the edge of that forest. Caesar Jackson, who was a Revolutionary War veteran, Lucinda W. Smith, a caterer whose father had been a barber for over 40 years, and Gertrude Kelly, who died at 10 years old and is buried next to her father Willard, who was a carpenter in town. So there were a few of those folks on the north end of the cemetery. And it's the second oldest cemetery in Burlington. What's the first? What's the oldest? Come on, people. Wow. You're getting a loaf of my bread. There you go. He is correct. Miles is correct. So Greenmount on Colchester Avenue. And honest to God, he wasn't even a plant. I mean, I didn't know he knew that. Next one, please. So, as some of you may also know, a lot of people were not buried in cemeteries, especially when there was a lot of illness or it was for a lot of reasons that happened. There was also a battery, which I'll talk about a little bit, Battery Park. And so when North Street was being dug up to put electrical lines underground, they came upon some graves. And so this was a UVM archaeological team who was at this grave site and trying to figure out who it was. And then they moved some bodies around and everything else. And next one, please. And so it also happened on, I think this all the time, what we're walking on top of. Everyone's backyards are just filled. But there was an addition put on this building, and so when they dug this up, they also found a lot of animal bones, but there were also some people who had been buried there. Next one, please. You're doing great, thank you. This church is very familiar to everybody. It's at the head of Church Street, and it was built in 1816 during the, quote, year of no summer. So, I know. So I don't think it had to do with being Unitarian, but said the Unitarian. But the forest had to be cleared, which I'm just, you think of Burlington as this huge area that's fields and farmlands and everything, but it was forested at that point. So a lot of farmers came in and helped to build the building because they had no crops that summer. So they had, sadly, time on their hands, so they helped. And the church owns the land up to the cemetery and leases those buildings. Let's see, what else? Next one, please. Now we're at Battery Park. So this Battery Park was 9 acres in 1812, and it was the property of the United States. In 1813, the park was the campground for troops gathered to resist the advance of British troops. And about 3,000 men were housed in temporary barracks just north of the park at that point. In 1831, the park was sold to private citizens, and during the Civil War, 1,858 men served in the Vermont Brigade between 1861 and 1865. And then finally in 1940, the park was deeded to the city of Burlington so that it could become public park space. Okay. Okay.
Thank you so much, Megan. Sorry, I know. We'll have you back for part 2. I promise.
I was just going to get to George Street.
If you want to do it quick, so we either have a couple minutes if anyone has questions, or if you wanted to do one more.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll do one more. So if you have questions, then you should ask them, and otherwise I'll just keep blowing through these. So it's up to you. Okay. Okay. Next one, please. I'll talk fast. So this is George Street, and these houses were built by the Champlain Glass Company for its employees. And that was the first kind of first manufacturing company in Burlington. And they covered a lot of space. They had a wharf, a storehouse, furnace, packing room, and other buildings that were developed at the foot of Pearl Street and also along the waterfront. And what do you think they made? That's good, Kristen. Yeah, it's a glass company. Windows, that's right. You don't get a loaf of bread. I'm sorry. Oh, I like it. She usually does. So they stopped functioning around 1850, and I just found this out from Elise, that number 40 George Street is where Mackenzie Meat started, which I didn't know that. You're nodding, Chris, like you knew that. No, but I did. Oh. So these are just 2 companies that are examples of innovations that happened in Burlington. Now, Burlington has, I think, is it now, am I really out? 30 minutes is done?
20 minutes. It was 20 minutes.
and then I was told 30. Going once.
I think it was 20, so we can end at 8. So we have another, our next speaker is
Okay.
8:30 or 7:35. So
Okay.
we're a few minutes over,
Okay.
but we will definitely have you
Okay.
back.
I was just going to talk about the railroad tunnel, so I'm just going to leave you hanging, and you'll have to.
That's a good cliffhanger.
All right.
Thank you so much, Megan. Sorry about the miscommunication. So sorry about the miscommunication. Yes. So we will definitely have Megan back for part 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. I think you're on the hook now for a whole history. So thank you again. All right, so our last presentation for the evening is on Fair Housing Month. So we have Sarah Russell joining us. Sarah is the Emergency Services Director at CVOEO, and she is joining us remotely. So Sarah, I will pass the figurative mic to you.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I am here to talk about the Elmwood Community Shelter. I also, before I start, want to give a little appreciation to Megan. I'm sorry to cut your presentation short. Megan was actually my very first supervisor when I was an intern in college, and it's nice to see her so involved in your community. So tonight, I was asked to come and chat about the Elmwood Community Shelter, and I don't have a whole lot prepared. This was a little last minute request. So I'm going to give a brief overview and then leave some time for questions for everyone. So as you all are aware, the Elmwood Community Shelter, or the pods, as some people call them, I don't call them that, but the pods are a homeless shelter, low barrier homeless shelter in the North End for 30 to 35 guests who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness. They enter the shelter to access, of course, a roof over their head and case management services to connect them to housing, to permanent housing. We have an array of services available on site, including peer recovery coaches and case managers who work one-on-one with folks. There are also meals provided by Feeding Chittenden. Feeding Champlain Valley. This is a partnership between the Champlain Housing Trust and Champlain Valley Office of Economic Opportunity, and the lot is owned by the City of Burlington. We have been operating the shelter since February of 2023, and in that time, we have served well over 200 guests and saw at least 20 folks exit the shelter into permanent housing. So we continue to track most of the people who are the vast majority of folks who exit the shelter into permanent housing, and see them being very successful in their independence in affordable housing. CVOEO has 2 case managers who are located on site and provide that housing navigation support to folks, also connections to mental health, substance use treatment services, employment and job skills training, legal services when necessary, and access to public benefits and entitlement programs such as food stamps or disability services. We provide low barrier flexible services to folks, so they are very accessible with our staff located on site. The shelter is managed by Champlain Housing Trust, and they provide 24/7 staffing support on site as well. I'm not sure what else you folks had in mind in terms of information being provided about the shelter, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much for the work that you're doing for the community. I'm just curious, I think I understand, read recently that the city agreed for another 1-year contract for that. And I'm just wondering if you could share, like, it's been successful, what you're describing is awesome. Does the city still plan on doing kind of year by year, or is there kind of a long-term picture for the pods?
Well, I mean, I think that you would need to follow up with the city to understand what their goals are for this location. They do own the parking lot that the shelter units are placed on. I think that I can speak from a community perspective, is that at a time when we see a real need for shelter beds, especially low barrier shelter beds in our community, it doesn't make sense to necessarily take them offline. However, I am aware that there are longer term plans for that site that may involve permanent supportive housing. But I think that it would be best to connect with the city to understand their future vision for this project.
Any other questions?
Hi, Sarah. My question is about the new Bridges Center that just opened on Winooski Avenue and Pearl Street, the corner there.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, because that's a recovery shelter. So my understanding of that is that's for people who are in recovery who don't want to be around, they don't want to be around people who are using substances, so that they're kind of removing them into a safer location. With Bridges open now, and I just want to mention, I volunteer with the Peace and Justice Center, and we do this kind of BTV cleanup crew thing where we clean up around town, and we've done that area for months and months and months, and now it's like extremely clean. Ever since Bridges open, we're like, we don't even have to worry about it anymore. The whole area is much cleaner, which is nice. But I'm just wondering if Bridges opening has sort of cleared up space in other shelters. Like I imagine this is like a really complicated sort of system, but like if Bridges is open, then that would have opened up beds somewhere else for people who want to get out of like sort of an area where they might encounter substances. Am I right in assuming that, or?
That is a great question. I'm so glad you brought that up. So it is definitely outside the scope of Elmwood specifically, but so Champlain Valley Office of Economic Opportunity, or CVOEO, as we refer to, which is a confusing long title for an organization. We operate 6 shelters across the Champlain Valley. So 3 of them are located in Franklin County. We have 2 domestic violence shelters and another shelter for single individuals or adults in St. Albans. We operate the Champlain Inn, which is a low barrier shelter for 42 folks, 42 adults throughout the year. And then we open an additional 26 beds during the winter season. And we also operate the Foundation's Family Shelter, which is located at 204 Pearl Street. We relocated that shelter recently from Williston, the Vermont State Police Barracks. And to your point, we also opened the Bridges Recovery Shelter almost exactly a month ago to the day from today, and we have 12 beds located at that property. And we have worked very hard to develop a network between all of our shelters. So we are pulling referrals from our low barrier sites for the recovery shelter. So folks who are working to maintain recovery within a low barrier environment, that's a huge challenge, and we wanted to provide an alternative to folks being able to access shelter in a more recovery oriented and sober environment. We have funding for the Bridges Recovery Shelter through a partnership of the Office of Economic Opportunity and the Vermont Department of Health. The Department of Substance Use has provided funding for this recovery shelter. And our hope is that it may be certified as a level 2 recovery shelter, which would be the second only certified recovery shelter in the state. One of the challenges that we're bumping into against that is that we would like to operate 12 beds out of that location. DSU and the Vermont Recovery Residences Network would like us to operate 10 beds out of that location. So we're in the midst of seeking a waiver around that certification. But I think that when we look at the needs of the community, we see that there's a huge need for a low barrier shelter to be the intake or access point to our shelter services system. Once we can get folks in the door within that low barrier environment, it's much easier for them to attain recovery if that's a goal that they have. We need that stability of a low barrier environment to engage folks, to bring them in, to help them to build trust within our systems, to feel supported, and then to access additional recovery services. And that's where the recovery shelter comes into play within our network. So we're able to, move folks from low barrier environments like Champlain Place, like Elmwood, and other low barrier shelters. We're able to move them into a supportive recovery oriented environment. The other, kind of beauty with CVOEO operating this shelter network is that when someone experiences a significant relapse of substance use, which we all know that relapse and lapses are inherent in recovery, and someone's recovery journey, we're able to supportively exit them from the recovery shelter into a different shelter bed. And that has actually happened. So we're not kicking people out to the street and having them sort of start this process, from the very beginning, so to speak. We're able to transition them to another option of a non-sober shelter and have them engage in recovery services again, and then be able to re-enter the Bridges Recovery Shelter in a place of greater stability.
Thank you. Any other questions for Sarah? Yes. You got it, Grace.
Sarah, I think you're a saint, and I'm in awe of you. I just want you to know that. That's all. So thank you so much.
Oh, is that Megan? Oh, thanks so much
It
for saying
is.
that, Megan. Well, I learned from the best, Megan. You helped me begin my journey in social work, and it has been quite a ride for sure. So thank you so much for saying that. That means so much to me.
Thank you. Because I can't imagine you ever sleep, so I appreciate what you do so much. It's huge.
Thank you. I do sleep sometimes. As many of you know, I also operate the extreme cold weather shelter throughout the winter, and that is a huge feat in itself. I recently transitioned from my role at the City of Burlington in late October, the last week of October, to this role at CVOEO to become sort of more entrenched in community and shelter services, and less entrenched in politics, which has been a really amazing transition for me. So thanks so much, Megan. I appreciate that.
Anything else? It's kind of hard to follow. It's like a closing comment. Any last call for any questions for Sarah? All right. Thank you so much, Sarah, for joining us, especially last minute.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thank you all. Have a nice evening.
All right. So that was our last presentation for the evening. Has everyone who is still here put their name in the raffle box, or the door prize, the door prize box that Charlie is taking around? Okay, well, he is finishing that up. If you didn't, flag down Charlie. I will say, if you have any feedback about the meetings, the structure, people you want to come speak, like Andrea, you mentioned having the mayor come, please let myself, Grace, Charlie, Kaysen, or Mark and Nora, who aren't here, your steering committee know. We are happy either to answer hear feedback by email, by finding us in person, by finding us on the streets as we're walking around, whatever works. And we do have regular steering committee meetings the Monday after the NPA meeting, so this coming Monday, and anyone is welcome to attend. It's just where we set our agenda for the next month. So if you ever want to attend, just reach out to our email first, because sometimes we change our location. So that is my only thing, but we really value the input of you as the NPA members. So please talk to us, let us know what you'd like to hear more of, or if you'd like to give a presentation. Like, I'm so glad that Megan reached out to give the history of the Old North End presentation. That was great. So yeah, please reach out. All right, so with that, everyone has their name in? Okay. Emily Casey? That's you, yay! All right. Well, thank you so much for coming, everyone. We will be here in a month, and have a great night.